Hey everybody, it's Tox from critshappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. We are here with another critique, and this one I am very excited about, actually. Surprisingly excited about. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Product placement. It's good. Yes, I'm drinking out of a Missile Command glass, because Missile Command was awesome. Alright, so we are here to talk about Lords of something. I don't know how to pronounce it. I have heard Lords of Xidit. I have heard Lords of Xidit. Lords of Xidit. I call it Xidit. Lords of Xidit is a game by, I'm going to probably slaughter this name, but Regis Bonnes. I think that's how you say it. It's a 3 to 4 player game. It says here 90 minutes. That's a farce, I believe. We played a 4-player game the first time in about maybe 65 minutes, 70 minutes. I can see this happening if you have someone who is analysis paralysis prone, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Lords of Xidit is really cool. See, I already called it something different. Lords of Xidit, Lord of Xidit. It's so, I don't know. Anyway, Lords of Xidit is actually set in the same world that Seasons is set in. But it is nowhere near the same game. Aside from some artwork familiarity, this game is completely different. The whole concept is you're trying to become the new sovereign of the realm. The last one has, I think, either died or disappeared or something like that, of course, and you're trying to take control. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that throughout the game. Now here's the thing about Lords of Xidit. It's probably going to get overlooked. In fact, even after watching this critique, you might look at it and say, hey, that's really cool, it's awesome looking, but I'm just not going to go get it. It's because there's so many other good things that came out of Gen Con, like 5 Tribes, like Abyss, like Sheriff Nottingham, not to be sycophantic, but it is good. There's so many good things that came out of Gen Con that I think that this is actually going to get overlooked. And that would be a big shame. So let's show you about it, and bear with me. It looks like a lot, and it's going to look really, really busy. But what this game does, it does really darn well. So let us grab our peasant farmers, grab our archers, and grab our battle mages, and jump into the world of Lords of Xidit. Okay, so this is a board of Lords of Xidit completely set up for a 4-player game. And I know, it's gigantic. It's ginormous. There's so much going on. What are all these discs? What are all these places? What are all these numbers? What are all these tracks? What are all these things? There is so much to take in at first, but it's actually quite simple of a setup. You have these discs, and they're two-sided. So one side, the white side, is a threat disc. The other side is a recruitment disc. You're going to shuffle these up at the beginning of the game and randomly deal them into piles. What you're going to do is you're going to put 5 threat side up randomly in the cities of the matching number. So this is 12, this is 12. And then 5 recruitment side up. So this is 13 and this is 13. The remainders get distributed between the recruitment track and the threat track. And what happens is every time one of these is removed from the board, so let's say 13 is removed, the next one coming immediately goes out on the board. So everyone knows what the next recruitment tile or threat tile is going to be. Now, I'll talk a little bit about why that's going to be important. So if number 13 went away, number 1 would come out and go up here, and then 13 actually gets discarded up here. Now the reason it gets discarded up here is everything that you recruit goes into a recruitment discard pile and will eventually become a threat token. Everything that you discard as a threat gets put into the threat discard pile and will eventually flip over and become a recruitment token. So that's a really big aspect of the game, which is really, really kind of cool. Now, you may be asking yourself, what the heck is the difference between a recruitment and a threat icon? And why would I even care, and how am I trying to win the game? So, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about winning the game. Winning the game is always going to be different. You're going to have these 3 different abilities that you're going to be striving for throughout the game. Who has the most money? Who has the most influence in the magic community? And who has the most reputation throughout the land? And you'll see along the way, as we show you, there's different ways to gather all 3 of these. These are randomly selected at the beginning of the game in terms of 1, 2, and 3. Now, why is that important? Well, it's a very big reason that these are important. You get these little tiny scoring track things. There's tokens for each player, one for each color. And again, this is a 3 to 5 player game. Well, at the end of the game, you're going to start to count up each one of these things. So, for example, if yellow has the most gold, yellow is going to go here at the top of that Hall of Fame track. If blue has the second most gold, they're going to go here. If red has the third most, they're going to go here. And if green has the fourth most, they're going to go here. So you track all that and you look at it. You're like, okay, yellow's in the lead, green's behind. Now, magic is, well, money's really easy. Whoever has the most money has the most money, and we'll talk about how you get money along the way. The magical community, the influence in the magical community. There's going to be rewards for defeating monsters, which are going to let you put little tiny miniature castles that are mage castles onto the board. If I defeat somebody, let's say I defeat this guy, he offers me a reward of 3 castles. So I could take 3 of my castles here, my magical castles, and you'll see a little dotted line in the castles, and put them on the board here. Now, as he's defeated, he gets discarded, and so on and so forth. But what that means is, at the end of the game, you're going to count how many castles are available. Now, money goes behind your player screens, so no one's going to really know who has the most money unless you're really, really keeping track. The actual influence in the magical community is on the board, so you're going to see all that, which is really cool. You're going to be able to know who's winning and who's losing in that. So let's say at the end of the game, blue had the most influence in the magic community. Let's say green had the second most influence in the magic community. Let's say yellow had the third and red had the fourth. You would then, at the end of the game again, you're tracking all this and you would score that. And I know this seems complicated, and I know you're looking at it going, oh my god, this is already crazy because it's taken them 5 minutes just to explain how to win the game. But you're going to get it in a second. You're going to go, oh, cool, Tox, I like that. Alright, so then the last thing is your influence inside of the reputation inside of the world of Xidit. So you'll see these little harps. They correspond to harp tokens that you have. One of the other rewards for defeating monsters, so again, if I defeated this guy, I get 2 harps. What I can do is I can take 2 harps from behind my screen, and you keep these behind your screen. There's a good reason for that, and I'll explain it in a second. And you can place them all on one location or distribute them to any region adjacent to where you defeated the monster. So this is number 12. It's adjacent to this region, and this region. I could put it in any one of those. The cool thing about that, I can put one here, and I can put one in the bastion. Now, why is that important? Well, the person who has the most influence in each one of these regions gets the larger number. The person who has the least, or the second most, gets the lower number. If players tie, then they each get the top line number or the bottom line number. If 2 players tie for the top number, nobody gets the second number. But throughout the course of the game, people are vying over this one because it's 6 and 4 points. And you're going to be putting coins, or you're putting these harps into that, and what's going to be happening is essentially no one knows how many are in there. And since you keep all of your harps behind your screen, that is part of the somewhat revealed, somewhat hidden information throughout the game. So at the end of the game, you're going to lift up the bastion, you're going to see who has the most in there, and you're going to start to count up total points in reputation inside of the magical world of Xidit. Whoever has the most is going to go on top of the track of the Hall of Fame. So let us say green had the most. Let us say red had the second most. Let us say blue had the third most, and let's say yellow had the least most. Now you're looking at this going, wow, that's a really colorful Hall of Fame track, and I have no clue what it means. I don't understand who's winning or who's losing. So now that we have all of this set up and tracked and marked off, we have to start eliminating players. And here's what happens. Starting with number 1, whoever is on the bottom is going to flip over. They're going to actually be eliminated from the game, including all of their subsequent tokens. So because green had the least amount of money, he's eliminated and his future tokens are eliminated. Therefore, he's not going to become the sovereign. That means it's really good for red because he's leading over here, right? No. Because then you look at number 2, and the same thing happens. Red flips over, and his subsequent tokens flip over. And then you look at number 3, and the person on the bottom is yellow, and they flip over. Meaning that blue is actually the winner of this game the way this set out. So as you can see, blue only was able to be the most in terms of magical reputation. He was second most in gold and third most in reputation throughout the land, but because of all of his work and pacing, he was able to win the game. This is one of the most unique, colorful, exciting scoring mechanisms I've ever seen, because you're tracking all of this stuff throughout the game and you're trying to remember, what do I know, what's hidden, what could surprise me. And it kind of goes back to a saying that I used to say, is that you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than your friend. So as you can see, yellow was doing pretty good and then got kind of hosed at the end there. So it's a really exciting way to determine a winner. It changes every game. The value of each of these are going to change, because if this flipped around this way, while at the beginning of the game I may want to get harps and focus on a harp strategy, towards the end of the game I want to make sure I'm getting money and I'm accumulating enough money so I'm not completely blocked out at the end. And it just does a really, really good job of varying up the gameplay and varying up the reasons that you're trying to do all the different things that you're trying to do. So that is how you actually win the game. Let's talk about how you play the game now. So we talked a little bit about the recruitment and the threat. Now, when recruitment tiles come out on the board, you're going to see these little circular patterns and these little icons. Well, it's really, really simple. What you do is when a new recruit icon comes out, starting at this arrow with the circle on it, you're going to fill it up with miniatures of the different characters. You're going to have orange, which are peasant farmers. You're going to have green, which are archers. You're going to have gray, which are infantry units. You're going to have white, which isn't on this tile, but it's a cleric. And then you're going to have purple, which are battle mages. Now the reason those arrows go around, and you'll see it on the back of player screens as well, is there's a certain order in which they get recruited. They get recruited from least powerful to most powerful. So the least powerful is your peasant militia, the orange. Then it goes to the archer, then it goes to the infantry units, the clerics, and the battle mages are the most powerful. Now what that means is, if my guy is in this city and I'm going to use a recruit action, I take whatever the lowest valued guy is on that recruit tile. So in this case I would take a peasant militia and I'd put them behind my screen. It's a very important thing to keep things behind your screen, because you want to make sure that people know a little bit of information about what's out and a little bit of information about what they don't know, right? So there are going to be some hidden things and some open things. That is literally everything you need to know about a recruitment tile. Other than, once the last person is pulled off, then it gets discarded again up here to the recruitment discard pile, and a new recruit tile comes out. And this one would go on number 1, and it too would get filled up. So you'd be good to go on that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the threat tiles. The threat tiles provide a couple of different things. First off, let's say my guy goes into this city here with this big giant dragon. The number 12 just signifies what city they go into. So he's in the number 12 city. There are 3 different rewards around the outside. The blue circles with the castles, again, represent magical buildings that you can place to gain influence in the magical community, which again is something that's going to be part of the endgame win conditions. The gold coins are exactly that. You will get gold coins. So in this case, it's worth 4 gold coins. And then the harps are 2 harps. Essentially what that means is the lord of that city is offering those rewards if you defeat that monster. So if I defeat him by using an archer and a cleric from behind my screen that I've recruited earlier, that I turn in back to the main barracks and the supply, I would then be able to remove him and choose one of those 3 rewards. And again, depending on what order these things are in, could determine which is more important to me, even though they're of different values. Some people might look at this and go, well, I always want to get the 4 coins. Well, depending on how things are laid out on the board, you may not always want to get the 4 coins. So if I chose the magic, I would put 3 magical castles on this right here, unless someone already had a magical castle there. If the yellow player had already defeated someone there previously, I'm not going to be able to put my castles there. You can also stack them. Each one is worth 1 point. So if I do this, that's worth 2 when you're tracking your end of game scoring for who has the most influence in the magical community. But again, the blue player couldn't come over and defeat someone and put a blue one on top of that. That's a big no-no. So there is going to be some early kind of maybe area or territory control combat going on where people are trying to get at least one of their castles down on the board in certain cities to take control of things. Now, that is it for a threat token. Once they're defeated, they go to the threat discard pile, and they will eventually become a recruitment tile. Now, how does all that happen? Well, let's say throughout the course of the game, all of these recruitments get put out there, and we have a total of, let's say, 3 of these sitting here in the discard pile. If you have nothing here, you take these and flip them over, and then this becomes the next recruitment tile that's going to come out. So these are always cycling, and they're always coming back. What was a threat becomes a recruitment. What was a recruitment becomes a threat. Because the same thing happens over here. If these guys are discarded as recruitment tiles, once these go away, then, and you put all these out onto the board, these are going to flip over and become threats and be cycling through the threat track. So you may immediately be asking yourself, what the heck are these 3 things? Well, this is where it gets really, really interesting. So inside of Lords of Xidit are these Slumbering Titans. That's what these 3 different stacks of tokens represent. If you're unable, because you're out there defeating and recruiting and doing all these different things, if you're unable to flip over tokens and replenish the threat track, the Slumbering Titans awaken and reinforcements come to their aid. What that means is, if you cannot do this, you must immediately flip over any pile that does not have a face-up Titan. You'll notice that these guys all have an X for their city. They don't go in a city, they're considered to be roaming the land. Okay? The next thing you do is you're going to take everything that's over here in the recruitment pile. So let's say we had a couple here and we had a couple here that were discarded like this when this happens. We take these, we flip these over, and we're going to take 2 from here and we're going to leave 2 here, shuffle the rest, and these will all become threat tokens. So reinforcements come to the aid of the slumbering, which are now raging titans because they're face up. Now, you'll see that the difference with 4, these had an icon for a regular threat token of what units you use to defeat them. So this takes a peasant militia and it takes an archer. So you may ask yourself, what are the question marks? The question marks are anything. You can use 3 of anything, 4 of anything, and 5 of anything to defeat each one of those guys. Now, how do you defeat them since they're not on the board? Really simple. You make sure your player piece is in a city without a threat or a recruit token. So if I'm in 16 or 20, I'm fine. I can take an action and I can go ahead and I can defeat these guys if I have 3, 4, or 5 characters behind my screen that I've recruited that I can put back into the main supply. If I do, I get the rewards around them. It's a really interesting concept to wrap your brain around because the idea is not so much that these guys are going to come and bring a lot of pain to you. They're actually helpful because you're going to be able to use these as mechanics to catch up. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, how does that work? Well, there's a big aspect of the game that we have not talked about yet. And what that is your programming board. Each player has a programming board. And you're going to actually, at the very beginning of each phase, you're going to program this to take actions. So, let's set up some stuff and I'll show you what that can mean. Alright, let's talk about programming your boards. So, this is a scenario set up in a game that happened to us. This yellow player is sitting here at number 1. He has a peasant militia and a cleric behind his screen that he could come down and defeat the monster at number 2 with. However, he also sees that in the threat track over here is a number 1 monster that only requires an infantry unit. And over here in City 8 is an infantry unit. So he has a really good potential to possibly kill both of these. However, this number 1 is not on the board yet. It's part of the threat track. That means that he has to hope or time that somebody else in the game is going to attack someone, defeat a threat token, discarding it, forcing a new threat token out on the board. So let's show you how this happened in our game, and you can get an idea for how it works out. This player immediately takes his programming board, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different actions. He's going to program them from left to right. He's going to say for his first action, he's going to go down a red road over here to City 8. For his next action, he's going to take an actual action and recruit, which is this green arrow, in that city. That's going to give him that gray infantry unit. He's then going to immediately travel back down a red road back to number 1. Now there's some options here. Depending on what he sees on the board, he could actually choose a yellow X as a wait action to hold off and basically skip an action on that turn, hoping someone else is going to kill somebody. In this case, though, he sees something that he believes in his mind is going to happen, so he's not going to wait, and he's actually going to take an action. Now technically, the way the board is set up right now, there's no action to take in this city, so it's a bit of a gamble, but it's going to pay off, and we'll show you how. The next thing he's going to do for his 5th action is he's going to travel down a black road, which is going to take him down to number 2. And because he already has a peasant, farmer, and a cleric behind his player board, he's going to go ahead and take an action in that city as well. And this could be a really big turn for him. It could also be a disastrous turn for him. Let's take a look at the next closest player, which is this blue player here in city number 6. Okay, so in this scenario, the blue player has programmed his board, and we're not going to show you what it is. We're going to let you experience exactly as we experienced it, and it's going to be really, really cool. So the yellow player is going to go before the blue player, and there's always a turn order that you'll keep going with a first player token, which rotates, and then play continuing clockwise. So everybody flips over their player boards at the same time. So yellow would flip over his, blue would flip over his, other players would flip over theirs as well. Now, here's what we see. We know the yellow player is traveling down a red road for their first action. Now, one of the really cool, interesting little tidbits they give you in the game is they give you this little arrow token. Whenever you take your action, you can actually put it over this, and it like locks itself against the plastic, so you know this action's taken and this is my next action. I do that, I do that, I do that. It's actually really kind of cool. Alright, so the yellow player takes his action and moves over to the number 8 city by traveling on the red road. Play continues clockwise with each player taking their first action. So the blue player has chosen to go down a blue road, and he's going to go over here to city number 11. This is good for the yellow player. He thinks it's a good opportunity here. He thinks the blue player may be trying to attack this, which is what his gamble was. However, if the blue player decides to go up to this black road up to city number 10 to recruit, then there could be some problems. Alright, so the very next thing in the action, the program wheel for the yellow player is to take an action. That's what this green arrow is. So he covers it up and he takes an action and he recruits this gray infantry unit, and that goes behind his screen. There's still a unit on here, so it doesn't get discarded and it doesn't get put out of play. The blue player then does take an action in city number 11, and because it's a threat token, it's going to be an attack action. He is going to reveal a battle mage, an infantry unit, and a peasant from behind his screen and turn them in to defeat this monster. Now, because he's defeated it, he gets the choice of placing 2 magical castles, getting 5 coins, or taking 4 harps and placing them in adjacent areas. So this is a really, really good opportunity. For this case, the blue player is going to choose the 5 coins, and he's going to take the 5 coins and put them behind his player board. This is going to get discarded down to the threat discard pile, which again will eventually become a threat or a recruitment token. But more importantly, the number 1 monster, which was on top of the recruitment pile, is going to come off and immediately come out. I'm sorry, I said recruitment pile. The threat pile is going to come off and go on city number 1. Now we go back to the yellow player, and the yellow player chose for his next action to move along a red road. So he comes back over here to city number 1. The blue player then chose for his third action to go along a black road and move up here to city number 10. The yellow player has then, of course, chosen his action as an attack action or a recruit action in city number 1, and this gamble has paid off. he can then take the infantry unit that he recruited in city number 8, turn that in to defeat this monster, and he can choose either 2 magical castles, 2 gold coins, or 1 harp. In this case, because there's no magical castles attached to city number 1, he's going to defeat it, and he's going to put 2 magical castles on there, increasing his influence in the magical community, which is great. The next token would come out. In this case, it's number 20, so it goes here, and the number 1 gets discarded to the threat discard pile. The blue player's next action, number 4 here, the 4th action, is to take an actual recruitment action. So he's going to take the lowest valued character in city number 10, which is an archer, and that's going to go behind his city, or his player screen. The yellow player's next action was to take a black road as a travel action, so he's going to move down here to number 2. Then the blue player is actually taking a red road and moving up here into the number 9 area. Now, all of a sudden, this is getting very interesting because the yellow player is thinking, I had this grand plan to defeat 2 monsters, but uh-oh, does my opponent have that same grand plan and he's about to defeat 2 monsters? Well, the yellow player takes his final action, which is an attack action in this city. He has both the peasant militia and the cleric, so he's able to turn those in and defeat this monster. This is either 4, you're allowed to get 4 magical castles, 4 coins, or 1 harp. Well, he saw the blue player take 5 coins, so it might be to his benefit to take the 4 coins and make sure he keeps pace with that player. So he could take the 4 coins and put them behind his player screen. So the blue player knows he's not too far behind. This gets discarded to the threat discard pile and a new threat token comes out. In this case, it's number 19, so that goes over to the number 19. The final action for the blue player is actually to wait. And he's waiting because he does not have all of the pieces to attack this monster. He picked up an archer on his last turn, he has an infantry unit, but he needs a cleric. So on his next turn, the next round, he could potentially come over here and pick up this cleric to then come back and defeat this monster. And that gives you an idea of how the programming works inside of Lords of Xidit. There's a little bit of gambling. You don't necessarily need to. You could program for everything that's on the board, and it does it in a really elegant way. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you're prone to AP, this could be very, very dangerous. But it actually is pretty slick because you're always going to be able to see the next tile coming out of the piles and the next one after that by what's on top of the stack. So you do have a good amount of information, but it does not take too long once you become familiar with the movement and the tracking inside of the game. Now there is one more thing that we haven't talked about, and that's how long the game actually takes. So you'll see that going down here, you have 1 through 12 down the left side. The game takes place over 12 game years. Each round is a game year. So what we just did, showing you gameplay, would have been considered 1 year. There's a pawn marker that gets moved up. When you get to 4, 8, and 12, you have a military census. So at the end of years 4, 8, and 12, you're going to have this military census. And essentially what happens is each player takes units from behind their screen in their hand. And going in order, everyone would take as many peasant farmers as they want in their hand, and then 1, 2, 3, and show how many they have. You do not have to show everything that is behind your player screen because, again, this may be information you don't want other players to have. Whoever has the most, or is tied for the most, gets 1 coin. You then repeat that process with the archers. The winner of that gets 2 coins. The winner of the infantry gets 1 harp to be placed anywhere adjacent to a region that their player piece is. And then the winner with the clerics gets 2 harps. The most interesting is the battle mage, which gives you 1 additional mage castle. Now, if you remember, you're not allowed to stack different colors of mage castles, although you are allowed to stack up to 4 of your own color or any player's color in a region that they have one. When you win this military census for the battle mages, you can only add this to an existing stack of mage castles. You're not allowed to put a brand new one onto a board. So this is pretty keen. And to be very honest, it's pretty hard to get battle mages in the game because at most on the tiles there's only going to be one, and you've really got to time that well. But this is a really cool mechanic because basically every 1/3, 2/3, and at the end of the game, you're going to have the ability to gain more of what you need for the end game, which can help you out, which is really cool. And one of the other really nice things that they do about this is they offer you a way to shorten the game. So you'll see that there is the 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. If you'd like to play a shorter game, they provide you these boards to go 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and 7 through 9. So you can actually play a shorter version of the game with the military census again taking place 1/3, 2/3, and at the end of the game through, but with a little less rounds. So you can actually shorten up the game, which is really, really cool. That right there is Lords of Xidit. You're trying to balance all the different win conditions that you need to get a hold of. You're trying to get influence, you're trying to gain reputation, you're trying to gain gold, recruit characters, defeat threats, handle the Slumbering Titans, which become Raging Titans, and have all these different things happening at once with some information on the board and some information hidden behind player screens that you're going to have to remember. And it provides an amazing gameplay. Let's jump into final thoughts. So that's Lords of Xidit. This game really profoundly personifies Don't Judge a Book by its cover. This is a game that I think a lot of people, including my own play group, the first time we sat down to play it, looks at it and goes, whoo boy, like strap in, this is going to be an event. There is a lot to it. There is a lot to pick up and learn at first. But once you understand some of the unique mechanisms inside of it, it actually turns out to be a great game. We have really, really enjoyed it. Now, as most of you know, I love Lords of Waterdeep. This game feels like Lords of Waterdeep. It's just done out over a board with movement instead of worker placement. And what I mean by that is you're going to each of these different towns to recruit these units. You're then going to be able to use those units to defeat the monsters. And you're going to get rewards for defeating them. It's just like Lords of Waterdeep in that sense, in that you're collecting you're using your agents to collect, fighters and clerics and things like that and turn them in for quests. Except that it does it on this like grander scale with the board. The military census is really cool because one of our games we played, the person actually won because of all the bonuses they got during the military census. All 3 military censuses, they won the coins, so they were on top in terms of coins, and that just pushed them ahead with everything else. And it was really cool to see that aspect of the game help impact who could win and who could lose. There's a lot to it in terms of thinkery. If you are someone who is AP, or if you play with someone who is analysis paralysis prone, this could slow things down because there is a little bit to think about when you're planning out and programming your board. You have the options of looking at what's coming out from the recruitment track next, looking at what's coming out from the threat track next, being able to plot out where you think your opponents are going to go. We didn't have any problems with it. We actually were able to move along very quickly. Our first game only took us like 65, 70 minutes, and that was a 4-player game, so it really didn't feel like it was anything that was bogging anybody down. But I could see how someone who is AP prone could get a little bit too deep into it. But it's a actually surprisingly very light game in that sense. Even if you screw up programming, there's things that, and I don't mean screw up like you made a mistake. I mean, like, let's say you decided to go to a city that you were going to attack a monster in, but somebody else had gone to that city prior and defeated it before you could get there. There's still opportunities for you to do things. That little action of the green arrows up and down allows you to take an action, and you're not necessarily declaring, I'm going to attack something in that town. For example, we talked about the Raging Titans and how you can attack them as long as you're in a city with no recruitment tile or no threat tile. Well, if somebody does that to you, if they end up taking the last of a recruitment or defeating a monster in a city you were going to take an action, there's a good potential you could still defeat a Raging Titan, which is really cool. That was one of the interesting things to wrap your head around, was the Raging Titans are not really a bad thing. They're actually really good because they give you opportunities to recover from any potential miscues or missteps in your programming, which I thought was really cool. It was a great catch-up mechanic. They can be very challenging to defeat and be the first to defeat, but they're really fun to try and go after. The whole way that a recruitment tile becomes goes into the threat track and a threat tile goes into a recruitment track, really well done. And then of course, the fact that the scoring mechanism, the end of game scoring mechanism, is different every game. And it's kind of, the way we were joking about it was, you don't have to be faster than the bear, I just have to be faster than you. You don't want to end up on the bottom of the rung, because if you do, you're going to lose the game. So you don't necessarily have to be the first in each of the 3 categories, but you don't want to be last. And that really provides an interesting gameplay mechanic. Overall, I absolutely am in love with Lords of Xidit. I think it is extremely well put together. I think it is extremely just mechanically sound. And it's a fun game. It just looks really good. Now, I would love to be able to plan a night where we play Lords of Xidit and then follow it up with Seasons, because that's kind of the idea. It's almost like a precursor to Seasons. In fact, most of the art you'll notice on the characters that we may have shown you, you'll see our characters from Seasons, which is really cool. Some people may call that recycling art. I call it world building, and I think it's actually really well done inside of this. So, Lords of Xidit, I cannot recommend highly enough. I think it's a great game to check out. I think it's a wonderfully fun time. I think it would make a great app game, just saying, but it's phenomenal. So definitely check out Lords of Xidit when you get a chance. In the meantime, I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Is this the first time you're seeing Lords of Xidit and you are excited about it, or you aren't excited about it and you just think it's average? Have you played it? If so, what are some of the best times that you've had? Leave your comments. Let us know. Leave your comments below in the YouTube channel. Of course, you can join in discussions on Facebook and Twitter by searching Crits Happen, or over at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope you enjoy all of your unit recruiting and Raging Titan defeating times inside of Lords of Xidit. Thanks so much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.